Today we're interviewing David Madayag. David, tell me, you grew up in the central area. Can you kind of describe your early life?
Yeah, I was born in 1942, December 17th. I was born on 22nd, just off of Jackson. In fact, the only house left on that block is the house I was born on.
Still there.
Still there. I went by there not too long ago.
Really?
It's the only house on the block left, crammed in between buildings. So I went to Horseman Elementary School, and then I went to Washington Junior High School for those years, and then I went to Garfield High School.
So, your family, you were raised as an only child?
Yeah, I was adopted.
You adopted, okay.
Mike Madayag was my father, and Irene Madayag was my mother.
Okay.
Good. My mother was from Oregon, and she actually did a lot of her work where the miners were panning for gold down in Gold Creek, Oregon on the river. She was not the cook, but the assistant, like. So she brought the food that was cooked, set it up. So, and that's her sister Blanche was the cook, one of the cooks that cooked for the miners. My father was born in Bawanga Union. He worked at St. Regis Paper Company for, gosh, I don't know, 35 years maybe. He drove a jitney, they call it. It's a lift truck. And they moved from Federal Way to Tacoma. He left early in the morning and then got home late in the evening, every day, 5 days a week. And I remember when he finally retired, I looked at the amount of money that he was making then. It was just, I mean, it was welfare money compared. Unbelievable, you know, what they would pay him for all that time he worked. Yeah. And they weren't very rich, but they did take care of me. I think that was good for me because it gave me drive to be more, to get more, to be able to provide for my family better. And I've always, even when I was picking beans and strawberries and all, I worked harder than most grown men. At 13 and 14 years old, I was in 15. I worked harder. I would bring my lunch with me, and I would pick beans and eat. Wouldn't stop for lunch. I'd eat the sandwich with one hand, pick beans with the other, just to make more money for the day.
I remember the first time I saw you, I was aware of you, was when the FYA was starting. And in 1959, we started, the FYA started the teen club. And you were an officer. Do you remember which position you held?
I think I was treasurer.
You were treasurer. Your family was very involved in transporting the kids in the drill team.
Yeah.
To different parades and all, that's how we got to know all the women in the family. You know, Myrtle was the one who brought them in, her mother, her aunt, your mother.
My first real job was called Burger King, but it wasn't the franchise Burger King.
That was your beginning.
That was my beginning of my actual work, where I got a paycheck and worked there 5 days a week. it was okay. I mean, I learned how to flip burgers. You had to cook 24 burgers at one time, small burgers, and then, yeah, I mean, it was,
You're a natural.
well, you learn to be a natural.
Yeah, right.
We made our own fries from scratch and milkshakes and floats and the whole bit. We learned how to, bread fish and fry it and the whole bit. So it was a good job. And
How old were you when you started that?
I was a junior in high school, so I had to be 17 when I started. And then I worked there until I graduated from high school. And I went up to Alaska in the fish canneries. We were the first young group that ever went up to Alaska, King Cove, Alaska.
What year is that?
61.
Okay.
Yeah. I missed the prom because we had to leave early to go up there.
Yeah.
And Dave Belmonte was with us, Terry Asina, Eddie Asina. I think Bob Floor was there, but he was the second year. He wasn't there the first year. Kenny Alcantara was with us.
What did you do up there?
We did everything. We were the young group that learned how to slime fish, salmon. And back then we had, it was nothing to have 200,000 or 300,000 salmon coming in there. There was plentiful salmon. Yeah. And when the boats would come in, they would unload them. We had a assembly line where the salmon would come down. We had a sharp knife. We would grab the salmon. Oh, they were already cut. The bellies were cut, and we would have to slime all the inside guts and stuff out of it.
Oh, that's what a slimer does.
That's what a slimer does.
Really, yeah.
Cleans the inside of the salmon and then puts them on another belt, and they go the other way. And we did all kinds of different jobs. We did the canning of them. There were certain parts of the salmon that would go into canning, where they would can them. So it was called a lime wash, where they would, after they were canned, we would run them through the lime wash. Any of them that floated to the top, then we had to throw away. They weren't sealed properly. So that was 2 years of doing that during the summertime. Made pretty good money.
David describes the racial inequities experienced in Alaska in 1961. The houses were segregated, and the Filipinos were given the lower-paying labor jobs.
One was for all the white folks, and all the Filipinos were in another house. The white folks, I don't know if I should say this or not, you can edit this.
Say it.
They were all supervisors, they were all foremen, and of course us Filipinos were all workers, slimers, canners, boxers. We made boxes. We did unload once we canned them and boxed them, we would put them on the ships when they came in, so we were stackers.
So I'm really rather curious that when everybody talks about David Madayag, you're connected with the kitchen, you're the chef, you're the teacher. How did it start? I mean, now you told us that you worked for Burger King when you were a teenager in high school. I think
that's how I actually got into the food business. I went 1 quarter to Olympic JC, and I ran out of money, of course. And back then, there was no minority grants or anything, and I wasn't smart enough to get an academic grant or anything. So I worked. I worked in the canneries, and I got enough money for 1 quarter at Olympic JC over in Bremerton. And then when that was done, my monies were out because I had to rent a house there, or apartment, I should say, there, and my money was out. So I came back and I got a job out Swepwing Inn, washing dishes. But then you could do more than that. I breaded oysters, shrimp. So that's where I really started. And then I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do in life. And I asked one of the cooks there how much a chef would make or how much a cook would make.
Yeah.
They told me, and I thought, well, at least, I get a free meal every day, so I can at least eat 1 meal. Back then, I made $1.25 an hour. And I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah,
$1.25
right,
an hour, 8 hours of work.
Yeah.
I made a little over $11 after taxes. I took home $8 for a whole day of work. And I remember trying to learn how to cook. And I used to peek around the corner at this one cook that was flipping eggs and cooking breakfast. And jobs were hard to come by. So they were very protective about what they were going to show you, you know, a youngster, especially a minority. And I remember the cook would see me peeking around the corner trying to watch how he's flipping eggs and stuff. And he'd say, "Hey kid, get out of here, get out of here," yell at me. So I'd go back, do dishes for a while, and a little later I came back and watched him some more. When I got home, I found this fry pan. It was all beat up and stuff, but it was okay. So I took an egg and I started flipping this egg, even though it was broke, over and over and over again until I got the technique down. And one day he was in a nice mood. He says, "Kate, come here. Can you flip this egg?" And I flipped it for him, and I did it. So he says, "You know how to cook this breakfast?" He showed me for 2 days how to cook the breakfast, you know, pancakes and waffles and flipping egg and omelets and all. And then he went, sat down, had coffee, and I was running the breakfast. But just before the chef would come in, he knew when the chef was coming in, he kicked me back in the dishwasher and he took over like he was working. I remember sitting down and making a list of type of jobs that I could possibly do. And I wrote down Boeing's, for instance, and I wrote down auto mechanics, because my dad did a lot of auto mechanic work. I wrote down cook, waiter. And so I started narrowing them down in my head, and I thought, well, Boeing's, I'll probably be on an assembly line, and I'll be doing this all day long, putting this on assembly line. I don't think I could do that. And then auto mechanics, I remember getting in, helping my dad once in a while with fixing auto mechanics, and I just don't like the grease and the oil and all the stuff that's involved in that. So I thought, well, you know, being a cook wouldn't be too bad. At least I'll get a meal every day. You were allowed a meal. So I thought, you know, I asked the guy how much a chef makes, and he says, well, they make this amount. There's a salary. And I thought, well, you know, maybe if I work really hard and study it like I would if I had went to college, maybe I could get there as a chef sooner.
So did you learn mostly on the job, not going to culinary school?
No, I didn't go to culinary school, but what I did was an apprenticeship.
Okay.
There was a chef who worked for Fred Waring in the Pennsylvanias.
Yeah.
He had a golf resort in the Pocono Mountains in Pennsylvania. And so he was visiting his sister here and working at the Sweat Wing Inn as a chef. And he liked how hard I worked.
Yeah.
So he asked me one day, he says, "Are you interested in doing an apprenticeship with me?" And I thought about it, and I said, "Well, where's it at?" He told me Pennsylvania, and it's a golf resort there. And I thought, well, you know, maybe so. I could learn more. And I knew that apprenticeship, you know, you don't get paid much, but, you know, you learn a lot.
Yeah.
So anyway, make a long story short, I did work there. It was a American planned house restaurant where when you pay for it, you pay for your room, you pay for your food, and you're entitled to go there. As an apprentice, I was there at 5:30 in the morning to work with the breakfast cooks, to assist them and learn how to do breakfast there. And then I would work straight through lunch, and then I would be able to go back to the dorm change my clothes, take a shower, and then come back and work till about 10:30 at night through dinner, 7 days a week. And I only made $1.25 an hour for 8 hours of work, even though I was there 14 to 15 hours a day, 7 days a week. But I was only getting paid for 5 days a week. But I learned a lot,
Yeah.
and that was good because I got a chance to learn with the roast cook, the breakfast cook, the broiler cooks. These were all specialty cooks. They were coming from all over, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, New York City, New Jersey, all over the East Coast. And they were specialized in what they did.
Mm-hmm.
So as I worked with each one of them, I learned a lot more how good they were and what they did. So that helped me. I did that for 2 years and felt I learned enough. I didn't need to do that anymore. And of course, it was only for the summer.
Yeah.
So it was 3 months out of the year. And I would come back here. And then once I got back here, I got some pretty good jobs. I actually opened up the Thunderbird Inn over in Bellevue, which is no longer there.
Mm-hmm.
It was a part of the Thunderbirds in Portland.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a brand new restaurant there. They hired a chef. I was an assistant. But after about 2 or 3 weeks, they found out that he didn't know us very much.
Mm-hmm.
And he tested me and found out I knew more than he did. So I was hired as a chef there. And I also worked at other different places before that, though. Yeah. I worked at bar restaurants, Hilton. I worked for the Hilton for a while, different places like that for a while before I got that job. And then the owner of the Burger King, the hamburger place that I worked at, he found out I was working there at the Thunderbird, and he came to me and he asked me, "Are you interested in opening a restaurant with me, being a partner?" And I asked him what he was going to do, and he was going to open a restaurant in Linwood. So we sat down, we talked about it, and came up with a name. It was going to be a family restaurant called the Pumpkin Patch. That's our name. We took it after Charlie Brown's The Great Pumpkin, and I opened the restaurant there because he didn't know how to cook that much, even though he knew how to do hamburgers, but as far as regular cooking, he didn't know much about. So I designed the menu and did most of the cooking and everything. It was out in Linwood, and when we first opened the doors, I thought, hey, I got it made. We got a franchise going here because people would clear out the door waiting to get in. It was great. I felt so good. About 6 or 7 months into it, we had that recession here in Seattle, where the cars would have the bumper sticker, "The last one out of Seattle, turn the lights off." That big recession, all the restaurants that opened up in Linwood were closing down.
Beginning in 1969, the Boeing Company began laying off employees due to oversaturation of the airplane market. Boeing teetered on the verge of bankruptcy. Then, in 1971, Boeing had lost more than 60% of its workforce, causing a ripple effect in the local economy.
It was
hard.
It was hard.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It was hard. But I'm a fighter.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to give up on things. So I knew I had to leave there to take care of my sons. And luckily, Dave Belmonte, who was one of my best friends, he called me, and he was a history teacher at Franklin High School. And he called me and says, "Dave, there's a consulting position with the FEAST program." FEAST program was food education service training for the students.
At Franklin.
At Franklin, who couldn't make, these were kids who couldn't make it too much academically. Yeah. So this was a program to teach them a trade, cooking. So they had taken a classroom and converted it into a restaurant. So I went and interviewed for the job, and I got the job, and it didn't pay a lot, but it paid enough. The good thing about it was I was learning how teachers worked and how they learned, because I was with the English teacher, and my job was to show them how to write verbiage for restaurants.
You were becoming a
The
teacher.
food. Trying to. I mean, I learned that from them. I didn't know what I was going to be at the time. But I was with the English teacher, then I was with the math teacher, and I showed them how food costing worked with foods. And then I was with the home economics teacher, where I set up the restaurants, how to cook certain foods and stuff, because she didn't know that much about, restaurant foods. But it allowed me to take Brendan and David to school in the morning, and then go to Franklin, and then I only worked about, I think, 5 or 6 hours that day, and then I was able to pick them up from school and take them home. I would get dinner ready, fix it, and then I called a babysitter a couple of houses down. Then I was able to go to my second job at night at the Ballard Elks Club.
So you were learning another skill now. This is like a teaching skill.
Right. I did that for about a year, and then during the summer, when schools were closed, I got a job. There was this purveyor who was inventory at the Hilton who knew me when I worked there, and he called me and says, John Wayne is looking for a chef for his movie McHugh, and he says he's looking for a Filipino chef. Hey, maybe I don't know why. Maybe he just thought we were good hard workers. Who knows? And I was surprised, and he says, "Are you available for the summer?" And I said, "Yeah, sure I am," because school was closed, so I could go do that. So I worked the movie. He had a big truck that he had designed, a big semi, where he had designed the kitchen in it so that he could go out on the desert for 5 weeks. You had water up above, and I had a tank down below to hold it. It had all the cooking facilities in it. I had a driver that would take me to where they were shooting for the day, and I would set up, start cooking. He made a detective movie called McHugh, and actually, I think it was one of his worst movies ever made. It was really boring. It was really bad.
Food
was
was great.
But food was good. I made sure of that.
Did he pay well though?
He paid pretty good, yeah. But the fun part about it was I could go to where they were filming for the day, and I would open the side of the doors while I'm cooking with a roast in the oven or whatever, and I could watch how they were filming every day. And they ate good. I mean, New York steaks, for lunch, and salmon and the whole bit. So they were happy. After that first year, I got another call. They were opening a commercial food program at Garfield, my alma mater.
So they had their eye on you then.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I applied for that too, and I got that job. It was at actually the New Washington Junior High School, located over there. And they had taken a large couple rooms, 2 or 3 rooms, and remodeled it just like a restaurant would be. So I got that job and I did everything there with the students.
How long were you there?
I was only there about 6 months. And the reason why was a good friend of mine, Frank Fuji, who was the basketball coach at Franklin. I knew him when I was working there. He called me. He says, "Dave, there's a instructor job at Seattle Central." He says, "I'll sponsor you if you want to apply for that job." And I did, and I got the job. And that's how I started at Seattle Central.
And you were there how many years then at Seattle Central?
25 years.
Yeah, you
Yeah, I actually worked there for 10 years as an instructor, and then I left there. I got a job, one of those offers that you can't refuse, but I should have refused it.
Yeah.
Jerry King tried to get me. Jerry King owned the Red Robins, Creative Concepts. He owns Salties and all of those. He came up to school and he offered me a job as corporate chef. And I was corporate chef, which means I had a chef in each 5 restaurants. And then I had a chef in each one, so I would travel and I set the menus up for them. I did all the recipes for them. I'd fly down to Portland, help them with their brunch in the morning, decorating stuff, showing them. Fly back up here and hit Salties at Redondo and Lake Union Cafe and Boondocks all in one day. I mean, I was working 7 days a week. I got another job down at Sun River Lodge and Resort. I went down there and took my family with me down to Sun River, and I took it from a 2-star, 2-diamond to a 4-star, 4-diamond Mobile rating in 3 years. And then the college during that time was remodeling the whole program, the whole floor, everything. And the dean and the president called me and found out I was down in Sun River and called me and says, Dave, we just remodeled the whole program. We put millions of dollars into it. We want you to come back, because they had closed everything. No students or anything. We want you to come back and start it up again. And I said, they said, well, we can't pay you what you're getting in the industry, but we'll do our best. So I flew up. Once I looked at the facilities that they had, the kitchens and the bake shops and the dining rooms and all the lecture facilities they had for each classroom, I said to myself, I don't care what they pay me, I'm coming back. It was beautiful. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
So I did. I came back as a lead instructor, and I hired some new people to come there, and we took it from 8 students to 150 students when I left.
Oh my God.
Every quarter we had 150 new students, every quarter.
Yeah.
It was just unbelievable. We were the best. The first 3 years after I became tenured, I was department chairman. So I ran the whole department, which included not only the baking program, the culinary program, but also hotel restaurant management program. And we had affiliation with WSU for the hotel management program.
Yeah.
We were the best on the West Coast as far as number of students and what we were offering for the program. And I was really proud of that. I was the only non-academic faculty who got an emeritus status when I retired.
Whoa.
That's probably one of my proudest moments to get that. Yeah. I was also in the American Culinary Federation for the state of Washington. I was president of the Washington State Chefs Association. I had led teams to Canada, Frankfurt, Germany, all over for competition, ice carvings and different displays. Because I was president, they allowed me to do a lot of different research and stuff. So I toured Italy for a whole month on restaurant research. The first Monday of every month, we would be at a new place, and there were 200 or 300 people there. Not only all the chefs in Seattle, but all the purveyors were there. All the managers from the whole restaurants and hotels were there. I would have to give them the latest news about what's going on in the restaurant business in the state of Washington and around. This medal that I'm wearing in this picture is the Academy medal, and you can only get that medal if you're certified with the American Academy of Chefs. And this was one of the highest honors to be in the Academy.
How many Filipinos ever got things like that?
Well, you know, Filipinos, I remember starting in this field, and I learned this right almost from the beginning.
Yeah.
Filipinos were only allowed, because of very prejudice.
Yeah.
You were allowed to be a waiter.
Mm-hmm.
You were allowed to be a bus person.
Mm-hmm.
You were allowed to be dishwashers.
Mm-hmm.
And you were allowed to be prep cooks.
Mm-hmm.
Anything more than that,
Mm-hmm.
very hard to get
Yeah.
anywhere. Now we're talking top hotels
Mm-hmm.
and restaurants,
Mm-hmm.
but it's very hard to get much further.
Yeah.
I knew that from the get-go.
Yeah.
But again, like I said earlier, I figured if I studied hard enough, planned what I was going to do,
Mm-hmm.
that I could maybe move up on the ladder more.
Yeah.
And as things started working, I know the old-time chefs,
Yeah.
chefs before me,
Mm-hmm.
had it very, very tough to get anywhere, to become a chef or an executive chef or anything in that area.
But there weren't that many schools available
No.
either. Yeah.
There weren't.
It was a growth thing through actually doing it. It was like internships.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it was.
Yeah. On the job training.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And I know there was a lot of cooks and chefs that didn't have that title,
Yeah.
but they were good. They were good.
Mm-hmm. When he came, you're talking how doing the kind of work that you did is hard.
Yeah, it is hard. Well, both sons actually worked in the restaurant business many times for me.
Mm-hmm.
I started them off, washing dishes, mopping floors, washing pots and pans, just so they would learn how to do things. A lot of times they didn't get paid for it.
Yeah.
I told him I didn't want him in this business, and mainly because if you're going to have a family, you're never home. You're always working Christmas, working New Year's Day, Easter, Mother's Day, Father's Day, all the holidays, you're always there. If the restaurants are open, you're there. And as a chef, if you ever get to the point where you're the chef, it's almost 24/7. If one of the line cooks doesn't show up that morning, was sick, or called in, someone had to do the job. You can't just, pick up the phone and get somebody in. You had to go there and do the cook yourself. So that's the hard part and you didn't make much money. If you're the chef, you were on salary. So if you work 7 days a week, 24/7, that's too bad. That's all you get. There's no overtime. Same thing with a line cook. They were paid very low wage. Waiters and waitresses make more money usually than line cooks do. David, he loves to cook and he loves to bake. And he researches a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So he makes items that are new on the market today,
Mm-hmm.
new chefs would bring out.
Mm-hmm.
He's really creative,
Mm-hmm.
what he does. I love that about him. My younger son
Mhm.
loves to cook too. So they both do. Yeah.
Did you ever get into Filipino food?
Oh yeah,
You
yeah,
did.
yeah. But I found out about Filipino food?
Yeah.
Whenever they would ask me to cater,
Yeah. Yeah.
I always said no. And they said, why not? I said, because no one's going to be happy with it. And they said, what do you mean? I said, every Filipino, depending from where they came from in the region of the Philippines, cooked adobo differently.
Yeah.
Cook pancit differently. All of it.
Yeah.
You cannot cook it for a party and without someone saying, that ain't the way you make it.
Right.
That ain't the way you make it. And being a chef, that hurts your feelings. You know?
Well, that's why a lot of the young chefs now are different in a way, because what they've done is they've taken Filipino recipes and made it their own.
Yeah.
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 So nobody can say anything because they're really upfront about the whole thing. This is new age Filipino food.
And I do the same thing. When I make pork adobo, the way I learned, I adapted to that. So mine's a little bit on the Spanish side of the Philippines. You know, I still put most of the same ingredients, but I'll put a little bit of a adobo. I don't know if you've seen the Mexican adobo.
Yeah.
I'll grind that up and put a little of that taste in that, and then I'll put a little bit of tomato paste in it, along with the vinegar and all.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a little bit
It's
on
a
the
little
Spanish
richer.
side.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll try that next time.
yeah. When I used to put up food for people, customers who would come in, the response you get once you cook that food and you put it up and you know you did a great job with that, and you know it's going to taste good and look good, and the customer gets that, you feel good inside. You may be working hard, you may be sweating behind a hot stove, but you actually feel good, accomplishment. At the end of the day of working hard, you go home and you feel good about yourself. You actually created something for people to enjoy. And that's one of the main things, is as far as do what you love and love what you do. I can take a buffet, and I love doing that. I love creating. And I can actually, when I sit down to figure out the food I'm going to use, the products that I'm going to use, I can visualize in my head somewhat of how I want the display to look ahead of time, just in my head. And then I draw it out, sketch it out on paper. And then I figured in the food products that I'm going to use and what I need to buy and how I'm going to decorate it and all. So I didn't know I was a sculpturing artist, but I learned it, and I'm a pretty good artist anyway.
Did that start when you were teaching though at Seattle Central?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that started then.
Yeah. And you taught students that?
Yeah, taught students how to carve ice. This elk, if you look at this picture, this was done in Sun River. We had 400 or 500 hunters that came there for a seminar, and they wanted food that were all game. Okay, so I made a serpentine table. I constructed this table. I had the maintenance people cut it out round. It was on 4x4 legs. So it was very, very strong pieces of wood. And then I took 7 blocks of ice. Each block was 300 pounds each. And my freezer wasn't big enough to put this whole elk together and freeze it together because it was be too big to get out. Nobody would be able to lift it. So what I did was I made each section, 7 different sections of this elk. And I got them each piece after I carved it, like the head, the horns were one, the head was another, where the neck was, half of the body here. And once I got it up, each piece, I froze it on the table. I could take slush, like shaved ice, and when you put it there, you can actually freeze it together. And it took me a long time, but when the party was all over, my crew got up there and rode this elk. That's how big it was. He got on the back, and it was something to see. Here's a different thing. This was done in Sun River also, and this was at the High Desert Museum. All of this is bread dough. This cougar made out of bread dough. The Sam is made out of tallow. Now what I did was, so what you do is you have a styrofoam background and you put this bread dough over the styrofoam after you carve the styrofoam to the shape you want. And then I take a torch, blowtorch, to cook the bread and brown it.
And so, would you like to share your words of wisdom or some advice?
Yeah, I think that I learned in doing my apprentice and starting off that I was told never to leave a job for more money.
Mm-hmm.
You leave a job for more experience.
Mm-hmm.
So every restaurant is going to be different because every restaurant has different food.
Yeah.
Every chef that you're working for has a different technique and different style. So you want to learn because of the food that they have, the menu, or the chef. And I learned that very young. And that's how I made my decision from working from one restaurant to another. And I think it really pays off.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's hard to work in a restaurant where you're not making a lot of money.
Yeah.
But if you're only making changes because of the money and the food is not as good as where you left, you'll never learn more. And in the long run, you'll actually have more knowledge and you'll gain more money in the long run if you do that. Do what you love and love what you do. Because if you enjoy what you're doing, you're going to do better in that job.
Yeah. If
you're not enjoying what you're doing, find something else. Find another career. Because you got to love it. You really got to love it, especially in the food world.
Yeah.
Food world has always been where you don't make that much money in the beginning. But in the long run, you can. And that's what you have to really enjoy it. After I retired, they would call me in to substitute here and there. And I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
When you spend that many years teaching and getting to know the students and watching them grow, watching them go in the industry, it seemed like wherever I went, if I ate at a restaurant or I went here, somewhere I saw one of the students and they would recognize me.
Yeah. Right.
It didn't seem to matter where. And even when you read in the paper, one of them became one of the top chefs here. Yeah. And you know that person, you help them along, you know. That really makes a difference. You feel like you accomplished something in your life.
Yeah.
You know.